the Chi-Town experience on the flight. Let me go tune in to Keek on the mic. He gon' make sure we get our news and highlights. When you get on YouTube, you better hit the like.
The Chicago Bears can look to trade down in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft and land some massive draft capital, not only for this year's draft, but for next year's draft as well. Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. As always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Bears fans, before I go any further with today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I want to give a huge shout out to the sponsor of today's video, and that is BetUS. As always, Bears fans, make sure you guys head over to betus.com and use promo code YouTube150 for 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000, and also get 125% second and third deposits as well. There's already bets out there on who will win the NFC North next season, and the Chicago Bears odds are not really great right now, but you know, with the new head coach and Ben Johnson and hopefully upgrading the offense and defensive line, the Chicago Bears could very well have a very good chance on winning the NFC North as soon as next season. Anything is possible, Bears fans, but make sure you guys head over to BetUS, use promo code YouTube150 to place your bets right now on who you think will win the NFC North next season. All right, Bears fans, so I wanted to talk about a hypothetical scenario. I'm not sitting here on today's episode of Keek on the Mic saying this is guaranteed going to happen, but let's talk about a massive trade down scenario in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Because I think at this point, I think we can all agree as Bears fans that unless the perfect player is available for a trade up, maybe like a Mason Graham falling to 7-8, maybe Abdul Carter falling to that 7-8 range, maybe then Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears will then trade up for one of those really, really good football players that can help their football team as soon as right now. But I think as Bears fans, we can all agree that it may be smarter for Ryan Poles on the Chicago Bears to trade down from that number 10 spot in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft and collect some massive draft capital, not only for this year, but possibly for the 2026 NFL Draft as well. And when you really look at the history of NFL drafts, usually teams that are outside looking in, talking about the top 10, the pick number 10 is usually a prime spot for teams to trade up. So I think the Chicago Bears are going to be in a pretty good spot. I think there's going to be a couple of players that people will be willing to trade up for. I truly feel that Ashton Jeanty is going to be one of those guys, and I understand there's a lot of Bears fans saying that, well, why don't we pick Ashton Jeanty? But it's because I don't think the Chicago Bears are going to pick a running back in round 1 unless certain things happen in free agency. But there's going to be teams that are going to trade up because they want some certain players that happen to drop in the top 10, right? So Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears can look to take advantage. So I'm going to give you guys one scenario that I can see possibly happening. And it's not anything crazy, right? But I can see the Bears trading down from number 10 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers all the way to number 19 in round 1 of the 2025 NFL Draft. And in return, they receive round 2 pick number 51 and a next year's second round pick as well. And of course, Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears could opt to get more, maybe even a first round pick in the 2026 NFL Draft for dropping 9 spots. It really all depends on who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or any team looking to trade up into the top 10 really want. I think realistically, the Chicago Bears could push to get a first round pick next year, but for the purpose of today's video, I think the Chicago Bears will land a extra second round pick, which would give them 3 second round picks in the 2025 NFL Draft, which would be absolutely huge, especially when you consider the depth pieces at defensive tackle, at the running back position, even at the edge rusher position. The Chicago Bears could really round out their roster and draft some key impact players in this year's NFL Draft. And then, of course, landing a next year second as well would be just as valuable because then that would give the Chicago Bears 2 second round picks in the 2026 NFL Draft as well. So this is one just hypothetical scenario of possibly what a trade back can look like. Once again, I think Ryan Poles would be able to possibly get a first round pick in return, but I think getting 2 second round picks for trading down 9 spots would also be very valuable for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears. And then when you look at some key players that the Chicago Bears could target, right, trading down from possibly 9 spots, and I think it's one of those things that if there's a player there at pick number 10, like a Will Campbell, which is always possible, maybe they do end up taking Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Maybe there is Abdul Carter that somehow happens to drop, which I know that's not a great scenario, but maybe he drops, maybe Mason Graham drops as well. But if there's someone there, yes, I can see Ryan Poles and Chicago Bears staying put at number 10 and just taking the best player available. But I think a trade down option is also a realistic option for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears, for a team looking for more draft capital, for a team looking for multiple impact players on their roster. We all know that the Chicago Bears have many areas of needs, especially on the offensive line. So let's say hypothetically that the Bears take this trade with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They go down to number 19. I can see a prime candidate being Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. I think he's going to be a day one impact starter. And of course, you have Andrew Billings and Javon Dexter. But let's say Andrew Billings goes down again. Walter Nolan would be the perfect player, especially in a trade back scenario for the Chicago Bears. Another guy that I've been talking about a lot, and I just talked about him on yesterday's episode of Keek on the Mic, and just talked about a sleeper pick for the Chicago Bears, is Armand Membou, the offensive tackle out of Missouri. Once again, when you look at his frame, 6'3", 325 pounds, you would think that, with this frame, he probably wouldn't translate to a tackle in the National Football League, but he does have the fundamentals that will translate to the National Football League. I can see the Bears putting him at tackle in place of Braxton Jones, just in case he isn't ready to go due to his injury last year. Or a guy like Membou can also be pushed to the inside guard position as well. Maybe the Chicago Bears can look at a couple of different edge rushers as well. Maybe they shock us at taking a running back in round 1, which I'm just kidding, Bears fans. I don't think they're going to take a running back in round 1 unless it's Ashton Jeanty. But there's so many different scenarios that the Chicago Bears can look at in terms of players that they can add in a trade back scenario. Maybe they surprise us by taking guard Tyler Booker out of Alabama, which there's a lot of teams high on him. I know that he is rising up the draft boards. But so, like I said, there's so many different scenarios, but the 2 players that I really like in a trade back scenario for the Chicago Bears, if they opt to trade back in the 2025 NFL draft, is Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss, or Armand Membou, the tackle out of Missouri. Like I said, those are 2 outstanding players that are flying up the draft boards. Once again, the Bears would be addressing trenches. They're both impact players day one with super high ceiling, especially when you look at a guy like Membou, only 20 years old. So he has some high upside, battle tested, just like Walter Nolan. I would be happy with either one of those picks. So Bears fans, my question for you is, are you guys content with the Chicago Bears staying put at number 10 and just taking the best player available? Do you want them to be aggressive and trade up in the 2025 NFL draft, or would you be fine with trading back in the 2025 NFL draft and round 1 to collect some extra draft capital to really add multiple impact players on this roster? Of course, Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have to nail these picks. Just because you trade back and get some extra second or extra thirds doesn't mean that you nail these picks. For example, in round 3 a couple of years ago, Ryan Poles selected Velus Jones Jr. So it hasn't been all pretty in terms of drafting for Ryan Poles, but at the same time, he has also drafted a lot of good young players as well. And now with the coaching staff that Ben Johnson has assembled here in Chicago, I have a lot of trust on what this coaching staff is going to be able to do in terms of developing some key talent. So now moving on to a different topic before I let you guys go on today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I want to talk about some possible trade options for Ben Johnson, some players that he may be looking to trade on the Chicago Bears roster. Once again, this is just hypothetical. I'm not saying this is actually going to happen. Just some extra, talking points here on today's episode of Keek on the Mic, just to get your opinion on these couple of players. As always, when you're looking at a new coaching staff, they're not always going to like every single player that Bears fans like. So we may have some, players that we really love and thinking that's a no-brainer that they keep. But that doesn't mean the same rules apply for Ben Johnson. He's a new coach here in Chicago. He has a new coaching staff here in Chicago. So they definitely may look to trade a couple of guys that don't necessarily fit on what they want to do here in Chicago. And that first player is DeAndre Swift, a guy that we've been talking about a lot. Yes, he had 1,300 total yards or plus total yards from scrimmage. Yeah, he did lack that vision. He's not really a workhorse 3-down back, right? And we all know that Ben Johnson wants to upgrade the running back position. And we do expect the Chicago Bears to upgrade the running back position probably in the NFL draft with a lot of names like Travion Henderson, Ashton Jeanty, Quinshon Judkins, Dylan Sampson from Tennessee. There's a lot of different running backs that the Chicago Bears can add, and I think that means that DeAndre Swift could be expendable. Once again, it's going to be tough to cut a guy like DeAndre Swift because, he just signed a 3-year, $24 million deal just last offseason, so that's $8 million a year. And once again, DeAndre Swift wasn't all bad, but when you look at the history between him and Ben Johnson, when he was traded from the Detroit Lions to the Philadelphia Eagles just a couple of years ago, that means, Ben Johnson may be willing to trade DeAndre Swift again. But the problem is, who is willing to trade DeAndre Swift out there? You look at some of the teams, and I just don't really see a team that may be willing, to take on his contract. Like I said, I think DeAndre Swift is a really good running back, so maybe a team would be interested in him. If the Bears were able to trade DeAndre Swift on a post-June 1st trade, they can save $8 million. Maybe they can invest, on other areas of need like the offensive line and the defensive line and free agency with that $8 million saved. And then, obviously draft a running back like Travion Henderson or maybe Ashton Jeanty would then come into play. But once again, I don't think DeAndre Swift was all bad last year. I do see the flaws and the tendencies of his lack of vision and just him not being that workhorse type of back. But like I said, behind the offensive line that we had last year here in Chicago, and for him to have 1,300 total yards in offense, and like I said, he's a pretty good receiving back as well. DeAndre Swift definitely wasn't all bad. But just thinking about the history of Ben Johnson and what he wants to do here in Chicago and the type of running back he is looking for this offense and to really help Caleb Williams elevate, I can definitely see the Chicago Bears trying their best to ship away DeAndre Swift to maybe a running back needy team and a team that values DeAndre Swift. Probably get a day 3 pick in return, talking about like a 4th to 7th round pick in the 2025 or even the 2026 NFL draft. And if Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears really don't want DeAndre Swift, they'll probably take any draft capital, save their $8 million, and then invest in other areas of the team of the cap space they save from DeAndre Swift trade. Moving on to another player, and I'm not really all down for trading this guy, but DeMarcus Walker as well. He is 30 years old. You would say $5.25 million on a post-June 1st trade. And once again, probably fetch a 4th or 7th round pick, day 3 pick in this year's draft or maybe next year's draft as well. Once again, I love DeMarcus Walker. He's a good leader, a good vocal leader. He brings that energy to the defensive line. He has been consistent and durable for this Bears defense as well. I think for this one, I could see one with his age 30. He's on his last year of his deal. Do the Chicago Bears, do Ryan Poles, Ben Johnson, do they want to extend a guy like DeMarcus Walker? If the answer is no, you can look to trade him now. I would also be fine with the Chicago Bears extending a guy like DeMarcus Walker. You would also have to ask yourself, how does Dennis Allen feel about a guy like DeMarcus Walker? He plays really on that, kind of like that tweener style of as an edge rusher. Maybe Dennis Allen is looking for something different, but I could also see the guy like DeMarcus Walker being useful. Once again, this is hypothetical. This is just a hypothetical scenario. I'm not saying that they're going to trade DeMarcus Walker, but it could be an option for the Chicago Bears, saving $5.25 million. And at the same time, you also have to question who would replace a guy like DeMarcus Walker. You already know the proven how proven DeMarcus Walker is. He's a vocal leader and he's a respected guy within that locker room. So would that, be a downgrade if you do get rid of DeMarcus Walker and you can't replace him? If you're going out and trying to get a guy like Josh Sweat, for example, then yes, I think Josh Sweat could be a little bit of an upgrade over a guy like DeMarcus Walker. Do you think Chase Young, a guy that has a connection with Dennis Allen, can be an upgrade over DeMarcus Walker? So those are all the options and scenarios you get to go in your head, especially if you are Ryan Poles. But just for the purpose of those videos, for today's video, that those are the two guys that I can possibly see Ryan Poles and Chicago Bears looking at. So Bears fans, do you think it's possible for Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and Chicago Bears to look to trade DeAndre Swift or DeMarcus Walker this offseason? If you're able to trade both of those guys, not only will you land a couple of draft picks for this year's NFL draft, you'll also save almost $14 million in cap space as well, to address other areas of need on this football roster. And Bears fans, also let me know any other players you think Ben Johnson, Ryan Poles, and Chicago Bears would be willing to trade on this roster as well. I cannot wait to hear from you guys. But other than that, Bears fans, make sure you guys continue to hit that subscribe button and the notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social media platforms. And make sure you share this episode of Keek on the Mic with every single Bears fan you know. And Bears fans, once again, make sure you guys head over to BetUS.com and use promo code YouTube150 for 150% deposit bonus up to $2,000, and also get 125% second and third deposits as well. But other than that, be back for our all new Bears podcast right here on Keek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and as always, bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the mic.